We've got Luke from the Konsensus Network on today. Hi, Luke. Welcome to Rabbit Hole Stories. How has your day been so far?
Guys, thanks a lot for having me. My day has been great. I'm on holiday right now, which is awesome. I live in Finland where they give very good holidays. So yeah, week 3 of 4, and yeah, a little
Oh, wow.
bit not looking forward to getting back to my day job, but yeah, enjoying the summer.
And no holiday will ever stop you appearing on Rabbit Hole Stories to talk about Bitcoin, right?
No, absolutely not. My holiday is from my day job, not from my Bitcoin job. I've actually said that more than once. Yeah, that this stuff is all the things that I do for fun, the things I'd be doing anyway. So we all need breaks from time to time, but yeah, definitely no holiday from Bitcoin for sure.
Yeah, and thank you for taking the time out of your holiday to speak with us. And as you know, at Rabbit Hole Stories, we're all about you and your journey into Bitcoin. So, Luke, what is your Bitcoin origin story?
All right, thank you. Well, okay, so I'll introduce myself quickly. You see, I'm sort of half named kind of thing here. You've got my first name and my Twitter handle. I'm still not all the way unnamed, so to say, but yeah, I thought it was a little clunky using my term pseudofin. So starting a little bit more towards the end, I live in Finland, but I'm not from Finland, and the origin story kind of starts really a long time ago here, where I started to find different sources of information and lifelong inspiration that eventually built on that into my Bitcoin rabbit hole. So really starting from the beginning here, some context. I'm from Western Canada, the part of Canada where most of the economy is based on oil and gas, and the economy in Canada quite generally is very reliant on oil and gas. It's an energy country, but much of the country and the current leader do not like to admit that or even like that at all. And the thing about it is, I'm not here to kind of talk about the pros and cons of being an energy rich society and being an energy economy. The reality was that where I was from, all of the jobs were in oil and gas in one way or another. It was either directly related to the producing or working with some kind of company that maybe provided services or worked indirectly with oil and gas, or then you spread out and it's all the services that work with the employees. In other words, the entire economy revolved around oil and gas. And when I left school, so this would be university in Canada. When I was in the process of leaving school, because I did an internship in the middle, which was a real long break there. Uh, but at that point, the oil economy crashed. And the thing about that was the entire society became depressed overnight. It went from times are good and everything is feeling great, and everyone's going to have a job, and everyone's prosperous, that sort of thing, to overnight, literally anyone could get fired, could lose their job, that sort of thing. And I was starting my career in that environment. And, I was, sorry, go, yeah. Do you have something? No? Okay, okay.
It was a silent wow.
Okay, okay. Well, so my the thing was, I was lucky in a lot of respects to be somewhat tech oriented. I went to school for computer science and gravitated towards kind of tech related jobs, and managed to find something that I could do that was um, useful, provided a good service, and I really worked at it, got some experience, that sort of thing. But I really felt like I combined lacked direction, and also felt the entire time that my situation was completely precarious. And so yeah, the entire part of my life over there was really trying to find the meaning in myself. I came from a religious background, but had a lot of problems with that over the years. I went back and forth whether I was going to be religious or not, and now I mostly am not, to skip to the end on that point. But the main thing was, in the absence of being a religious person, I needed to find meaning in something. And so I'm going to start off with probably the most controversial part of this entire piece. So the person that I found refuge in, and the philosophy, so to say, that I found refuge in was Jordan Peterson. And the main thing was I didn't find Jordan Peterson through his what you call 12 rules for life type of thing, the sort of popular stuff. And this isn't to diminish that, but it was his original book, Maps of Meaning, and a series of lectures that he did on YouTube, the Maps of Meaning lectures. And the thing about that was I treated finding those lectures like a school course, like a university course. Like I was taking his university course and I watched them, I took notes. And to give you an idea of what this was, the entire point of Maps of Meaning was to explain how the world functions in the brain, essentially. It's not about the empirical world, that the world is made of something physical and you can break it down scientifically. That's not how the brain thinks about that. That was the whole idea, that us as humans break the world down into places of order that we know how to deal with. We know exactly what's going on here. And then chaos, that which is outside. And the entire human experience is basically making sense of order and chaos. So I'm not trying to say that those ideas are true in the sense of that is 100% an explainer of all of human behavior. But I do assert that it's true in the sense that we act like it's true. And the same analogy can sort of be made of religion, first of all, that religions are kind of true because people act like they're true. God, that can be one thing. And interestingly, Bitcoin is also kind of similar in that sense. We act like Bitcoin is true, therefore it is. But it so happens that Bitcoin has a lot of things underlying it that you can go through and somewhat prove out a little bit differently than God or religion. The point here, though, so by taking in a new life philosophy, I was able to give myself some meaning. And I say it like that in the sense of that I believe everyone should take agency in and of themselves. External people in the world, influencers or people producing content, whatever, and I'm including myself as that. You can only produce a message, right? But the thing is, every listener, every individual has to take in that message and do something with it. And so I personally take ownership of my own journey in that sense, that I am proud that I was able to take that and put some direction into my life, actually start to have goals for myself and begin to make sense of the scary world around me. And it really started a really long path, a journey that's gone all the way up till now, and I'll get to the Bitcoin of it soon enough, I guess. So the next person or influence on me was Joe Rogan. So I hadn't found Joe Rogan before Jordan Peterson, and it was through Jordan Peterson appearing on Joe Rogan that I made that connection. But that opened up a whole other world of just listening to smart people for 3-4 hours and listening to what they have to say. And okay, maybe it's not something that I'm always interested in, but definitely there were so many things that were new to me, and it just made me love the podcasting genre in general, and completely contrast that as well to like mainstream television, right, where you have literally 30-second clips and then they had to move on to the next topic, maybe 3 minutes, something like that, and no attention span. And I liken that to high time preference, low time preference, right? Like if you're really high time preference, you need to switch things off. Like I mean TikTok is the you take that to the furthest extreme, right? You have to flick to the next thing in 2-3 seconds, something like that. But a podcast where you sit down for 3 hours is just amazing. And I mean, some of my favorites from the Joe Rogan days are just stuff that I find fascinating to this day. Got the one I'm re-watching over this holiday is Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson, who talk about all this ancient civilization stuff that's all a little bit crazy and out there, but it's kind of not if you listen to them. So I'd recommend those guys, but I find them a lot of fun. But the point was I got to find some more practical advice there. First of all, Joe is a kind of guy who is into healthy fitness type stuff, and really encouraged me to take control of my life. I hadn't really been a healthy person. I still am not really a healthy person, but I at least try to exercise and all that. But a couple of other people that I found there, well, one specifically was Jocko Willink, ex-Navy SEAL, who wrote multiple books. Actually, now it's quite a few books about specifically leadership and how to act in business as well. But his main thing was he's just a hardcore guy who wakes up at 4:30 in the morning, no matter what, gets after it, and has funny catchphrases like "discipline equals freedom" and things like that. And it's inspiring. I don't live up to that. I definitely don't. But I did try jiu-jitsu for a while, because that was the other thing that Joe Rogan, Jocko Willink are kind of into. And so those things were kind of the practical side of, where I would put someone like Jordan Peterson is kind of the philosophical side, making sense of the world in a more cerebral sense. Everything was mirrored by this Navy SEAL talking about how a certain experience that he would have on literally the battlefield of Iraq would translate into regular life and business. And I found it helpful. I have been in a corporate setting my entire career, and navigating those things, and especially becoming less of a junior person, more kind of intermediate in my career, and getting into the Bitcoin space as well, and trying to take on some leadership roles, so to say. Yeah, stuff like that is definitely helpful. But yeah, I would definitely recommend to check out Jocko Willink, and his books are I'm blanking. The Dichotomy of Leadership, and I'll have to find the other one. This is embarrassing. The Dichotomy of Leadership was the second one, and Discipline Equals Freedom is one of the other books. Oh well, sorry, Jocko. But
isn't it also Extreme Ownership or something like this?
There you go, Extreme Ownership. Yes, thank you. Extreme ownership. Yeah. That's the whole thing, is take ownership of everything, basically, to the extreme. So no, I took those two guys, Jordan Peterson, Jocko Willink, and that became kind of my life fuel for 3 to 4 years, something like that. Joe Rogan in there. But then kind of to finally start to get towards the Bitcoin side of it. Another person that I found through this was Lex Friedman. And not to go too long about that, but I just liked that he talked to different people and was able to talk from a kind of scientific perspective to other people from a science background, which is different from Joe, which is who is not a scientific person, and he admits it. Even though he's smarter than I think he gets on, which is something you can probably also say for some other podcasters in our space as well. They don't. A lot of podcasters we know might not give themselves enough credit. I'll just say that. But so Lex was great, and the thing was, when crypto was going crazy, and Bitcoin, of course, in 2021. Yeah, Lex started having crypto people on, and I'm conscious of my words here, so I'll go back slightly. My workplace back in 2017 was big on Ethereum. Yay. I don't know why specifically. Even looking back, I can't really explain why it was Ethereum over Bitcoin. It was just more like I think the narrative was that it's the new thing and it's going to replace Bitcoin, therefore it's better. But almost everyone bought a little bit. Okay, fine. Then it crashes, and of course I forget about it. But then when in 2021 it's pumping, it's like, okay, did I have a Coinbase account? Oh yeah, in my password manager, yeah, it says I did. Okay, let's go log into that. And the maybe $30 I had in there was a little bit more by that point. So, all right, free money, great. So I promptly turned it into a whole bunch of shitcoins, and that was a good lesson, and that was also a nightmare on my tax form. And yes, I do my taxes because yeah. But the main thing was that started the whole thing off again. The bull run, that's great. But I had all these influences and these people that I kind of looked to and gravitated to for my information and had kind of grounded my life philosophy on. And so I was into the crypto thing as an investment, and that was really all it was. But I was looking for something more, something deeper. And so when Lex started to have some people on that were talking about crypto, specifically crypto in a intelligent way, oh no, that was powerful. Probably every single crypto person he had on, I listened to, and I thought they actually have something there that's okay. Like, I'm going to go look into that project and see what it is, kind of thing. And the entire time I hadn't considered Bitcoin at all, because yeah, I believe the narratives, that Bitcoin is just this relic, that it's not going anywhere, it's not the future. So yeah, I was going to be doomed to to just investing and having my balanced crypto portfolio, which funnily enough, the only reason I started to allocate towards Bitcoin at the beginning was because people on Reddit started to say, okay, well, you should have a little bit of Bitcoin because it's like the blue chip and it's going to anchor your portfolio against volatility, blah, blah, blah. It's like, all right, fine. But then Lex started to have some Bitcoin people on. And ironically enough, he started with Pomp and Nick Carter, which, yeah, aren't the most popular in maxi circles these days. But to their credit, they both talked very well and very eloquently about Bitcoin, and it made me much more interested in it as a concept. Like, okay, is there something more to this? Is Bitcoin more important than these other ones? And yeah, so that kind of started it off. And the hilarious thing too is that you get into a kind of one-on-one podcast setting versus a show that someone's producing. Pump specifically is who I'm talking about. Completely different person. He's not putting on a persona or anything. He's trying to explain the Bitcoin specifically, and it's like, okay, well, sometimes you just got to separate the message from the person and from the delivery, and so those were positive things. But the key guest on Lex Friedman was Robert Breedlove. And this was something like a 4-hour episode for sure. And yeah, like, amazing philosophical discussion. My entry into the world of Bitcoin philosophy generally, I was absolutely hooked. In hindsight, he was breaking down the Bitcoin Standard and his Sailor series. That's on like second viewing kind of thing after going through some of these other sources and all this. But it was great. It was fantastic, and I think Robert is very good at enunciating these stuff. Like he's a great podcaster, but I like when he speaks more. He also did an appearance on Peter McCormack recently, What Bitcoin Did, and I loved that one as well. Yeah, he's definitely ingesting the things that he's listening to, and he can explain it in very good ways. But now, to call back right to the beginning, the main thing that hooked me, though, was right around the middle point. He starts talking about how this all works with Jordan Peterson's philosophy. And at the very end, he said that Jordan Peterson's book, Maps of Meaning, was one of the 2 books that he would recommend reading. So, yeah, that just hooked me. I knew I needed to know more. And the thing about it was it was grounded in something that was familiar to me, and also something that just generally societally had been controversial. Like I was very careful not to be too open or forward about being influenced by Jordan Peterson, because that, like, a lot of people don't like him, or like if someone mentions that. But it helped me a lot in my life, and I'm not going to be apologetic about that. And the thing about it was, in Bitcoin, I found a place where I could actually be open about that and be honest about what my philosophical influence was and are. So the main thing was the fact that Robert Breedlove was talking openly about this and making that connection. I knew instantly I had to go learn more. And I mean, this is the point where I can pretty much just sum it up by saying I went and watched the Sailor series, and that did it. Michael Saylor and Robert Breedlove, that's a masterpiece. the first 9-10 parts where they did it all in over the span of a few days or something like that. It's just amazing. And yeah, it hit the right combination of just breaking things down to first principles, literally starting with prehistory, the history of man and how money fits into that, and then explaining how Bitcoin is the perfect form of money, that the best form of money that humanity has conceived of, something like that. It was just it. And so yeah, there's really past that point, it just turned into that maybe I wasn't quite a maxi yet, but I soon was. I started finding all the Bitcoin communities. I hadn't found Bitcoin Twitter yet through all this, and that was just opening up a whole new world, especially to find people locally as well. By this point, I'd moved to Finland, and that was actually kind of a contributor as well. Was moving countries. I ended up having a fair chunk of my capital in Bitcoin by the time I moved. And it made it simple because I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to. I did some things the traditional way, transfer through bank accounts, that sort of thing. But other parts, it's just like, well, okay, I've already got some in Bitcoin. It's like, well, yeah, I've got my keys, so I'm fine when I get to the other end. It was great, but yeah. So that was in the process. I moved in just about 2 years ago in 2021, and then. Yeah, so I mean, my rabbit hole, that's it. Going all the way back to Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, Jocko Willink, Lex Friedman, Robert Breedlove, Michael Saylor. That's it.
I want to pick up on a point you mentioned towards the end with the whole Peterson thing. And I know a lot of people on the internet don't like his current statements, or to be fair, even myself, I don't like a lot of the stuff he sometimes says about like the Annan things and things. But you brought up a very important point. He contributed to a lot of people, and I bet he solves a lot of problems for many, predominantly men, as far as he's always talking about, who had mental issues. And I mean, the guy was a psychiatrist for God knows how many decades. He's probably in it to help people and not to be a dick online. So just putting that out as a thought. If people are triggered by it, maybe take another stance. You don't have to agree with everything. And that's the beauty behind, I would say, the Bitcoin community, right? Because we talk about these things. You don't have to agree on everything. Even when you mentioned Breedlove, Luke, to be honest, I think there are certain aspects with Breedlove that are good. I think there are certain aspects, maybe as a European, where I kind of go like, fuck's sake, that's very different than what we would say over here. But, that's part of that thing. And I think your whole story, even from your background in the energy sector in Canada, or like in the energy world, to coming into Bitcoin, it kind of feels full circle. So it was pretty fascinating to listen through the stages and go like, oh, it's quite cool that he landed in the Bitcoin land in the end, because it sort of was the evolution out of the whole thing.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, the main thing there is that I didn't choose any of this. That's the funny thing is that I grew up where I grew up, and a lot of these things where I was making the best of my circumstances. I found jobs in the oil and gas industry because they were the good jobs to have where I lived, where I had friends and family. And then going on with that, it was kind of every time I would find something new and inspirational, I would dive into that and felt like that was something I needed to do something in it, and Bitcoin included. But the one thing I did when I was really inspired by Jordan Peterson was I made a podcast for a while that was kind of mimicking his he did an archetypal analysis of the biblical stories, or at least the book of Genesis. And I tried to do the same thing with Norse mythology and Finnish epic poetry. So that's to explain the weird side of me and why I made it to Finland, sort of. But no, I did that for a while, and it was kind of to mimic the things that I felt were influential in my life and try to figure it out. Because I think the thing is, as humans, we try to imitate the things that we find influential, or that we find heroic or good. Like the thing is, a lot of behavior is about trying to mimic these hero stories that we see all around us. It's why we venerate sports stars and celebrities and things like that. It's not really because we think we're going to be exactly the same, but they're aiming for some higher ideal. And the kind of dark side to that is also that a lot of people lack meaning or lack direction, and so they look to the distractions, the bread and circuses that are put around by society. So it's like, okay, like go worship this pop star and then forget about how the economy is in total wreck, right? So it kind of all ties into that. But yeah, I think I started to take some ownership and agency of my own financial not financial. Like finding Bitcoin was like everything started to actually make sense. Like I tried to invest. I owned a home for a while. Now it's like, oh, I hate the thought of being tied down to a specific piece of real estate that the state can just seize or whatever. You're just stuck with a terrible loan or something like that. And yeah, all of these things have just completely changed my view on life, basically. And so, yeah, that's my story, basically. And I mean, what you were touching on about kind of the controversialness of it is that I hope those sorts of things aren't as controversial when we invert clown world with Bitcoin, something like that.
It seems like while you were living in Canada, you had 5 big influences within your life, and the first discovery was Jordan Peterson. So something obviously resonated with you and the message that he was trying to put out in the world, and it kind of connected with you. And it seemed like then that led you on to Joe Rogan and then on to the next person, and eventually down the line, the likes of Michael Saylor and Robert Breedlove, where you then ultimately discovered Bitcoin at the end of that, sort of hopping from that one person to the other, because those narratives between those people must have built a bridge between each other. Does that make sense? How has that now formed part of your day-to-day life? Is Bitcoin ingrained in their messages with you, and do you or do you separate them? Does that make any sense, what I'm trying to ask you?
I think so. I'll answer the question as I understood it anyway. So as I get it, yeah, the main thing, the reason why I mention all of these influential people to me is that they are important, and that I do try and take what they say into my everyday life. Out of that whole thread, probably the one that seems tangential is Jocko Willink, the one that I mentioned there. It's not exactly like that led me directly to anything further, but the main thing was that there's a practicality to Bitcoin that as much as we can think about it in our heads, right? To me, we have to then take it and start doing something with it. And it's one thing to put Bitcoin away and never think about it. I couldn't do anything but act on it, on the things that I felt were important. That was the difference there, was that I think in finding influential people that I based a lot of my own life philosophy on, who were doing things that inspired me. I didn't aspire to be the next Jordan Peterson, but I mimicked what he was doing because I was so affected by it that I wanted to try to make something similar to show, hey, like, this is a set of stories that you are very interested in, the Genesis stories, the Bible. And Jordan Peterson is nominally a Christian, so he says. Well, I'm not saying so he says, like, he says so. So, yeah, I'll give him face value on that. And for me, I was influenced at that time by another set of stories, and I wanted to try and tease out the parts of that were important. And I wanted to also make kind of the assertion that it doesn't have to just be Christianity. It can be something completely unrelated that also has some deep meaning to it, because this is one point that an important thing to me was that stories and mythology encode part of human nature deep down in the subconscious, in the archetypal structure of it. They're lessons that aren't literal, but they do reflect a reality for human behavior. That was really important to me to kind of make sense of my religious upbringing, first of all, to make sense of why people believed that, and also to try and play with this from other perspectives. And so the main thing there that I was trying to do with that was make sense of all of these things that had influenced my entire life. And the thing was, by the end of this, by the time I'd been making a podcast on mythology for a little while, well, I kind of felt like I didn't need to do it anymore, and I didn't really need to have this sort of belief in these stories anymore. I felt like I'd seen behind the curtain somehow, and that I could see the message that they were trying to say. And then, okay, it's like, let's skip to the end here. What's the effect on life? What's the effect on what I'm going to do with my life? So I think, to try and answer your question a little more directly, that's always been there, definitely, that I've tried to apply these things to my life. And the more practical aspects of it were always to try to do something with it. I wasn't content with just having my job and making a living and then doing whatever the heck I want after hours. I always had to have something on the side to, one, keep me busy, but also that I feel like I'm contributing to something important. And Bitcoin, no, it quickly surpassed anything. And the main thing was I was trying to find what I was going to do in Bitcoin for a while there. I would say I'm at like a year and a half into being like a proper Bitcoiner kind of thing. And then so for about half a year, I was just trying to be a part of the Bitcoin community. I joined Twitter. Initially, I actually had my full name out there, but then I changed it after I kind of realized maybe this stuff is a little on the controversial side. And maybe I'll switch that one day, but I do still have some fiat concerns. But the thing about that is I do feel uncomfortable that I'm not fully unnamed. I think skin in the game is important, and to a certain extent, the main thing is I think anyone who actually knows me, knows who I am, would know who I am seeing this. But the main thing is that that it might at least be a little bit difficult for someone. No one could Google my full name and then find me, that sort of thing. But all that said, is that I have been trying to find the way I would contribute to Bitcoin for a long time. 6 months or something like that. But yeah, I had ideas. I was thinking of maybe doing something similar to you guys, like just start a podcast and see where it goes, kind of thing, right? But I was lucky enough that I was given a little bit more of a structure to do that. So I think what you guys are doing is brilliant, by the way, that you've got that you're just out in the community and making connections and getting great guests on, and you've had plenty on, and I'm honored to be one of those now. So I guess so. The thing was for me was that I found Konsensus Network, which, yeah, my shirt. And Konsensus is a Bitcoin publishing house that started as a translation house, essentially. So the first book published and translated by Konsensus Network was the Bitcoin Standard into Finnish. The creator of Konsensus Network, his name is Nico, at OmniFinn on Twitter. And he's from Finland, and in fact, he's from nearby where I lived for the first little bit when I moved to Finland, and currently I'm still fairly close. But he though ironically enough, he moved away from Finland and had kind of had enough with it. And the funny thing was, I had DM'd him and Konsensus Network asking, hey, so like, do you know anyone in Finland who's in the Bitcoin community? Anyone you can point me towards? Because the thing was, I saw that they had Finnish language Bitcoin material, and I was learning Finnish. I wanted to read all these things in the Finnish language because I'd moved there, and I'm trying to use the language as much as possible. And yeah, I still have trouble talking about Bitcoin stuff in Finnish, but yeah, I have the books anyway. but that was the connection. And so I DM'd him, or it might have been the Konsensus Network account, and sort of started to make some first local connections. But the thing was, they put out a Twitter call out for help with marketing, basically. And the thing was that I took a chance that my having done some podcasting in the past could be a fit for what they were looking for. And yeah, turns out it was. They still needed someone to do marketing, and thankfully we've found the marketing person, so that's good. But they wanted also someone to run their YouTube channel and then make content and that sort of thing. And so that's what I've been doing now for about the past year. And so I, in practical terms, I run the Konsensus Network YouTube channel, which is starting to be a little bit more than just a couple of single shows. We're kind of a content network kind of thing, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The first show that I started producing is the Freedom Footprint Show with Knut Svanholm. And so Knut is an author with Konsensus Network. They also publish books. I skipped over this a little bit too much. They translate books into, basically, they facilitate the translation of books is the kind of thing one that they do. And the other thing that they kind of learned to do in the process was publishing books generally. So Konsensus does everything end to end from publishing. Like if an author comes with a rough manuscript that they want published, basically, Konsensus can help with, first of all, basic grammar, punctuation, editing, that sort of thing. Like make sure that it's grammatically correct, kind of thing. But also helping with polishing the book and making it ready for actual publishing. So that's editing, and then translation can be done as well from English to many other languages. The biggest ones at the moment would be French, Spanish, Portuguese, Dutch. We do some German as well. Finnish is still a big one. Swedish, Norwegian. So lots of languages, and not limited to just European. That just has been kind of where the Italian. I shouldn't forget that. But yeah, we're always looking to grow with more translators. Basically, if people want stuff translated into other languages, the idea is we know what to do, we know how the process works, and then when the translation is actually ready, we can publish it then and get it out there. And from publishing, there are a lot of things that need to be done outside of the publishing, just getting like a raw manuscript. Then there are a lot of steps that need to be done, and that can be done by Konsensus, typesetting the specifics, the technical specifics of making a book laid out the way it is, publishing an ebook, getting it printed, all those sorts of things. So yeah, Konsensus does all that. So I realize I went a long way from your original question.
Mate, like I said right at the beginning, this is your journey. This is your Bitcoin rabbit hole, and we're just along for the ride. And it's been a fascinating journey so far. And I love the work that Konsensus are doing. They're highly recognized within the Bitcoin ecosystem. They've got a good reputation, and the content that you guys are translating is important because we need the Bitcoin signal put out there to as many people as possible. So you're reaching out into communities that would otherwise not get the message. So that's significant. But as a content creator, I feel very privileged to speak with all these Bitcoiners that come on our show, that invite us down their Bitcoin journey. And I've learned a huge amount since doing this podcast. What sort of things have you learned and taken away whilst doing the same thing over at Konsensus?
Sure. Well, okay. So I think I have to give you just slightly more context in that case. And the main thing is that I spend a lot of my time these days hanging out with Knut Svanholm, who's a real character. Yeah. You've had him on, But that's the main show that we produce over at Konsensus, and my role there originally was kind of producer, but pretty quickly that turned into I'm the co-host, and me and Knut, we're a good team, and so we really enjoy the process of making the Freedom Footprint show, and that's a lot of fun. I also get to do some other things. Once Bitten with Daniel Prince now is putting the videos out on Konsensus, so that's been great. And we're trying to also connect other content creators into kind of that network there. But so the main thing I've learned about this is that by talking to so many people, you turn into kind of a connector yourself. That's how I feel, is that I think the biggest value in doing this is getting to meet people and understand what they do and what they're interested in, and then they would be perfect if they talked with this person, or maybe they could help out with this or that project, that sort of thing. And the main thing really is that there are so many people out there in the space. Like what I mostly focus on is the so-called philosophical side. It's not like I'm not interested in the technical side. In fact, I have a technical background. The economic side specifically is important, and I think there's a very blurry line between philosophy and economics within the Bitcoin space. But I think the main thing is I really like thinking about the implications of Bitcoin and what that does to change people's lives. I mean, the thing that I observed in myself was at least a consciousness of that I'm absolutely way too high time preference. Like I still am. I struggle with it all the time. My wife is much better at it than I am. At about only buying those things that we really need, that sort of thing. But the main thing is I now think about it and I know it, and I also can think about that if I am going to store something away for the future, that's a good choice instead of gratifying myself in the short term. And it's all these lessons that maybe as a kind of more longer term Bitcoiner might sound like this is just what happens to everyone, but it really is personal, right? Like everyone's journey is personal, and the changes and those things are so fascinating. And one angle that I really like to dig into is that if I think, how would I orange pill someone, right? Like I almost want to give them so many examples of like people's journeys, right? And and that's why I really like what you guys are doing, because it's sort of like, here are all these examples of how people have gone down the rabbit hole, right? Like if I connect with some people with a similar background to me, right? Well, then that's fantastic. And if there are so many other people out there with different things, I mean, yeah, that's the whole idea. And so I guess one of the main things I've learned is that people have so many different backgrounds and so many different things they're interested in that you really just have to have these conversations and make these connections and help Bitcoiners connect with each other and grow together, because we all have this aligned incentive. Bitcoin has such an amazing property of helping everyone align to a common goal, and we don't even necessarily need to exchange sats to make that work, right? We can just help each other. That's what I found so amazing is that Bitcoiners are so willing to just help each other out. And as soon as you've talked to someone and made that connection, right, it just becomes so much easier to think, hey, like, it would be great if they talk to this person because they're interested in doing that. Or even a case of if someone I've met from the Bitcoin community needed help or was in my local area and needed some assistance or whatever it is. Yeah, like I trust Bitcoiners way more than I trust the average person, right? Just because we have this thing in common. And yeah, so the main thing I have learned is that it's good to connect Bitcoiners.
And it is, like you said, it's an easy connection. Funnily enough, I remember in Prague, so we had Industry Day, the last day, the third day. You had one of the girls. She had a bit darker hair. She was working more on the left-hand side of the booth. like the third day she looked at me and she's like, haven't you bought a lot of books lately? I was like, yeah, some friends, like they're in the States, they couldn't make it. So I was like, oh, I can buy the book for you. I could then ship it and all of these things. But she went like, oh, no, that's not an issue. Like, not a problem. We like to sell you the books. But she was like, it's cool to see that Bitcoiners are actually engaging because you're often, behind your laptop or your phone and it's not really a one-on-one connection. And secondly, I think most of us would agree we have so many different opinions, so many different ways into how we ended up in Bitcoin. And we can be on total opposites of, I don't know, let's go for political discussions. But somehow we still know, like, okay, they like Bitcoin, so we're okay with it. And I think that's one of, from my perspective, the most fascinating things and powers about Bitcoin that we very rarely speak about. Because we could really basically be a total gun nutter on one end and a total gun anti-hater on the other end. But we still manage to sit down at the same table and discuss Bitcoin. Which is also something I like with you guys in Konsensus. You really take in all of the different types of books, types of stories that are being told, and fit this in. And I just went through the YouTube channel beforehand. The Freedom Footprint Show has actually a lot of the guests we also have on, or we plan on having on. So it's also funny how small the world sometimes is, eh? But in terms of your backstory, when you started in Canada, the trucker convoys were a big part for many people I've spoken to in the last 2 years, maybe, who really opened their eyes and went like, oh, I don't have to agree what happened there, but they closed bank accounts. Like, what the fuck's going on? Do you think Canada specific, because we very rarely hear from those corners, can find its way more into Bitcoin? Because especially what's going on now, you sometimes really scratch your head and go like, this is happening in Canada. Like, this is not happening, I don't know, somewhere in an authoritarian state or whatever. This is happening in probably the most friendly country in the world you can think of if you've been in Canada. So do you see a path where a lot of more Canadians come in? Or do you think, if so, they find different ways like you do, maybe move country, or already are in Bitcoin and trying to help out otherwise?
Yeah. First off, shout out to Virginia because she's definitely who you were talking about in the booth in Prague. She's fantastic. She does way more than pretty much anyone knows. She's fantastic for us. So hoping she does more and takes more on. Okay, to your question. Canada is extremely culturally divided. Canada has some of the same problems that the United States has, just manifested differently. Mm-hmm. Canada could be, I've said 4 different countries, but just to simplify it slightly, it's 3. There is a part that is French-speaking, and that part is constantly threatening to leave the rest of Canada. And yeah, that's interesting. They also happen to take quite a lot of money from the rest of the country, so that's also interesting. And it's why they won't leave. Then you have the English-speaking parts, but there is the part with all of the population. That's so-called Central Canada. Ontario specifically is the province, but culturally that's also the far west coast as well. So that should ring some parallels with the East Coast and West Coast United States kind of thing. And then you have the middle that mostly makes all the money but doesn't have nearly as many people. And so in a system of democracy, they have less power because they are fewer people. And that's created loads of issues. And the thing about it is I do think that a lot of people from those parts of Canada that are a little bit more economically disadvantaged by their own government are going to be a little quicker on the uptake with Bitcoin. And as I've seen it, Alberta specifically is starting to become a very central place for Bitcoiners in Canada. Now, I left before the trucker convoy, and I think probably that's a good thing. I might have been one of those people donating to the convoy and then getting my bank account closed. That's entirely possible. I do feel somewhat like I dodged the worst of it. Canada has a reputation about being a very friendly country, but it's really been taken over by some of the worst parts of the authoritarian left, I'll call it, in the sense of that everyone has to militantly fall in line with the current agenda, and specifically whatever Justin Trudeau says goes. And no, I'll make no bones about it. Like he's a wannabe dictator, and if there weren't at least some checks and balances in Canada, he effectively would be. He's got a cult of personality, and many people in Canada are fooled by him, and he's the worst thing to happen to Canada since his father was in power. Legitimately, I probably wouldn't have left Canada if he hadn't come in and started enacting policies that were directly hurting me and the people around me. So, the best thing to happen to Canada would be voting him out of office as soon as possible, and undoing a lot of the damage he's done. And to further that, I think a lot of people are turning to Bitcoin there, but I'm not on the ground anymore. Maybe I've taken a way out in the sense that I've moved jurisdictions, and honestly, I can't imagine going back with Canada as it is now. I went back to Canada for the first time not too long ago to visit some family, and it's just not home anymore. And I think there are other Bitcoiners who say similar things about that finding Bitcoin and then they go find their Bitcoin Citadel or something like that. And there's cool stories about people moving to El Salvador, or Madeira is a popular one from Europe side. I haven't been there yet, but I really should go visit. And the thing was, I ended up in what would by all accounts be considered something similar, like a comparatively commie country, Scandinavia, Nordics, and all this welfare state, high taxes, that sort of thing. But it's vastly different, and people are not nearly as interested in policing what's going on, and it might be high taxes, but society kind of makes sense here. So I'm here for the long haul, as long as I can manage to get a permanent residency or citizenship or something. And I'm probably not going to live in Canada again. I would guess I wouldn't.
Yeah, that's hard to hear, that the country that you were born in, and I'm assuming that is a country that is unfriendly to your values and your beliefs, so much so that you felt that you had to leave. And I guess that's where the power of Bitcoin lies, right? Is because you mentioned earlier, you just took your wealth with you, and there was, you didn't have to really do anything other than just bring your cold storage device and keep your keywords in your head somewhere. And that's the magic of Bitcoin, is that you can make anywhere your home, if it fits your values. What is your Bitcoin fantasy? What does a Bitcoin world look like to you once we reach that hyper Bitcoinization?
I'm definitely a believer in the sense that I think I believe in a lot of problems are caused by fiat. I think that is really true. I don't believe Bitcoin fixes absolutely everything, but it does fix the problem that the money, the medium of exchange, the store of value, is in control of a third party, a controlling entity, a centralized controlling entity. You can say that it's all controlled by the Fed or whatever, the US dollar. Ultimately, it's all out of control of the everyday person, so to say, and it creates so many misaligned incentives to misallocate capital, to invest in things that would be discarded by the market. I personally think that when people say there's never been real communism, there's also never been real capitalism. And the thing about it is, I don't necessarily believe we're going to a 100% so-called anarcho-capitalist future, the libertarian's dream, so to say. I kind of think Finland is an example, in a certain sense, of it's a country, for some context, that 5.5 million people. That's relatively small as countries go. It's quite large in terms of geographical area, but it's quite small in terms of people, and it's just everything is predictable. Life is predictable. People have agreed on a certain set of rules to live here. And yeah, maybe the government does some kind of insane things, and maybe I would like less government power to intrude on the freedom of people to choose, or the government to make less decisions, something like that. But for the most part, society just you pay a little bit more, but you get quite a lot out. And you should have Nico on, and he can explain why Finland sucks. But for me, I think that overall, we probably are going to have something resembling medium-sized countries at most, would be about the largest. Like a dream might be that you have kind of cities with a rural area around them that all have agreed to work together and cooperate and share the costs of security, and have their own policy on immigration, that sort of thing. And maybe you take it to the size of a country, and maybe in a case where everyone speaks the same language, or it's a region that can be self-sufficient, something like that. Maybe those would be the types of groupings. But I do somewhat insist that we are going to need to go more towards what I would call like a consensualist view. What Knut would call a consensualist view. Like everyone has to agree. And but it's a two-way street, right? It's not like you can agree, but one guy living off in the corner can just say, screw off everyone else, I'm going to do my own thing. You do need to have some organization and some rules, and there's got to be a limit to the amount of I'm going to go against the grain and do my own thing. Well, then you can go leave and join up with your own little group. I think Balaji is kind of a big proponent of this with his network state stuff. But I do think some of this stuff is going to still be geographically based. So hyper-Bitcoinized world, we take out all the misaligned incentives in fiat, and then we finally will have a system where people can exchange value in a fair way, and something that makes sense. This is the unit of account of Bitcoin. And then, well, what will be, because governments won't necessarily have the power to wage wars, and the governments won't necessarily have the power to compel their citizenry to do something. And those things I think are net good, even if they might be less power to deal with, say, so-called threats. But maybe that's like security, something like that. But maybe that's a challenge in the future, how people are going to have to figure out how security will work in the future. How will people defend against those who have negative intentions? But maybe Bitcoin makes that easier as well. Not so much that Bitcoin fixes this exactly, but if the whole prosperity of the world grows, right? Crime is mostly an effect of poverty, right? That people who are in desperate situations are more likely to resort to at least petty crime. But then greed is another thing, and I think that's also a fiat thing, right? That frauds and gaming the system, right? Like all of those are bad incentives, and I think Bitcoin does even that out. It doesn't solve the problems, but it does take away the bad incentives. So that's my dream. Yeah.
I can see your dream. I can see your vision, and it makes absolute sense. And it's something we've said more than once on this podcast. That the fiat world has polarized us from one camp to another, and it's suited them really for them to drive their narratives. And like you said right at the beginning, when you first mentioned Jordan Peterson, you used the word controversial. Because there isn't really room for discourse and discussion and working out, because, as soon as you say something, you're labeled, something, and you don't really then have the opportunity to have a voice within those spaces that are against you. And I think with Bitcoin, there is an opportunity for us to, with our narratives and our beliefs, come together, because we all agree on Bitcoin, and we can work it out, because all we need is a consensus network, right?
Perfect. And well, the funny thing about that is this is why I've enjoyed talking to guys like Jason Meyer, or I think he says it Mayer actually. I think I've heard him say he's been annoyed about the pronunciation. So sorry, Jason, if I got it wrong and when we talk to you. But that reaching out to people on the more left side of the aisle, so to say, I think that's definitely important, because the thing about that is yeah, Bitcoin at the moment might be a lot of primarily right-wing people, or at least people that are more temperamentally towards the right wing. Maybe. The funny thing about it is I don't know that that's actually the case. Maybe that's just the ones who have made it onto Bitcoin Twitter or something like that. And maybe Twitter also gives some opportunity, right, that you can be anonymous and be a bit of a jerk. And I do not agree with Jordan Peterson for his anon thing. I do not agree with that at all. I think he is missing the point. But the thing about it is, slay your heroes is a little too harsh. Like, you can appreciate part of what someone says and disagree with other things. I think that's true. And holding someone up as a hero is the wrong way to approach anyone, really. I say that this person was very influential and their ideas were important to me. Still are. That's it. Full stop. It does not mean I agree with Jordan Peterson politically down the line. The other side of it is that people from both sides of the spectrum can come together into Bitcoin. And the thing about it is that I do kind of see that a lot of Bitcoiners sort of fall away from this politicalness once you come into Bitcoin a little bit. And the biggest thing that so one thing I've realized about myself as well is that, like, I was super lefty for a while when I was in high school and university for a little bit, because I thought that was they were the group standing up for people being oppressed by Christian church, you know, specifically LGBT, that sort of thing. I thought that was just really not cool of the church, and that was something I struggled with, you know. And the thing about it, though, was that I realized I was more anti-authoritarian. It wasn't necessarily just that I was against the right. I was against the authoritarianness of it. And then fast forward that, right? I really see the authoritarianness being on the left now. That these are the people telling everyone what to do, and you have to fall in line or else you're canceled from society, sort of thing. And the biggest flaw I see with people on the left these days, or the left's ideas that are infecting people and bringing them into that worldview. The biggest problem with that worldview that I see is that it just discards what people on the right are saying, right, out of hand, without listening to the point that they're making. Like, you disagree with leftist doctrine X, oh, you must be sexist, racist, homophobic, whatever it is. No, it's that there might be something that the left has not considered. There might be second-order consequences that haven't been considered. And I think I've turned into more of a cautious person in that sense, and I think caution also somewhat temperamentally leans more towards conservative political parties over time. That's one reason why voters shift right, so to say, as they grow older. It's really not so much about becoming hateful old white men. It's becoming a little bit more cautious, that sort of thing, and conservative in the more direct sense. Like, let's not change anything too quickly or too harsh. And maybe that's also the thing, is that I see a lot of narratives from the left that really just want to fix the world immediately, without understanding that maybe that you have to take this a little bit gradually, and so yeah. Getting that side to come to the table and get into Bitcoin a little bit more, I think that would be absolutely valuable, because yeah, I think it's good to get everyone into Bitcoin, first of all, but it's also, I think, the pathology of the left. A lot of people can get saved from being stuck in that worldview, which I think is very destructive and currently is the driving source of a lot of fiat problems. But again, it was the right about 15 years ago, maybe. So, in my view.
I just wanted to say, because I remember, especially during the last 3 years with my previous involvement in my work, I saw a lot of my friends who, still to this day, you chat with them and you're sort of being labeled as conservative, and I go, well, hang on, I'm not, If I have to look at like the labels you see in the mainstream media, right? I go like, no, that's not me. I'm just willing enough to question, hang on a minute, maybe, just maybe it makes sense to listen what they're saying. Because I have my beliefs, I have my values, and I can sit down at the table, look them in the eye and say, no, that doesn't make sense because ABC. And I think a lot of that is being driven by that fiat mindset of, divide and conquer. Those are sort of the main things you see in the media landscape. But also, obviously, sort of dollar hegemony, having a lot of power over certain countries. I'm not sure. Have you read, because I think he's not with you guys with Konsensus, have you read Alex Gladstein's newest book, the IMF book?
I haven't read the book, but I read like all of his pieces before that. Too many books to read.
Yeah.
But no. I'm familiar with his whole thesis, and I think his book is in my Kindle somewhere.
Yeah. It is scratched, noted on my head with like every little detail I found.
Yep.
And when I take these things in and I look at him and I go, a lot of the points he's making are very, I'm calling it old school liberal. So, standing up for minorities, all of these things, making people aware of the unfairness that's been going on, especially in Africa. That's what a lot of the book's focus was on as well, in Asia. However, yet, if you then say, the solution to this is not to have centralized authorities or, new, let's save the kids programs. It's actually to give them an opportunity through, for example, mining with hydro energy and being less dependent on expensive energy costs out of southern part of Africa, if I'm not mistaken, or all these other different incentives that Bitcoin drive. And because there is no one in the middle issuing that Bitcoin or issuing that schedule of how you end up there, it inevitably is a net benefit for everyone. And I think if you start looking at the world this way, and Ian and I, we often also have different, points of view. Ian is maybe more the hipster, big town boy. I grew up on the countryside, so those are different values you bring with into each other. But again, you end up at that point, we both agree on Bitcoin or on its values, and therefore we'll find a way of getting that discussion done. And I think a lot of that sentiment is also pushing through, especially with people like Jason and also people who are maybe more vocal on the left. If you think about a Ben Van der Waal, I can't remember his last name.
Van der Waal? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Yep. These people are fundamentally important to get in and get these people out, and maybe they encourage people who are more on the left-leaning side to actually speak out, because I think it's like you said, it's just a Twitter echo chamber where certain individuals are the loudest, and naturally if you already hear the same things happening again, at one point you're fed up and you don't really want to get back to them. But yeah, it definitely will take some time, but that's why we're here. And who knows, maybe a few Konsensus Network books will also help get the job done.
Yeah, well, and here, that's the thing too, is that there's so much content being produced. It does not have to be under any one roof. And the one thing is by just a lot of geographical where this was founded is that Konsensus has a lot of connections in Europe and with European authors, but America is a lot more. BTC Media is a big publisher there. I think that's what both Jason and Alex's book are in, and that's great. And books come from many different places. Konsensus is just offering a certain service set, so to say, and the main thing as well is Bitcoin only. Got to be Bitcoin only, and or Bitcoin compatible as well, because it doesn't have to be stuff that is directly Bitcoin related. There can be books like Daniel Prince's Choose Life, for example, is not really a Bitcoin book exactly. It's there's a lot of different things there. Also, Knut Svanholm's Praxeology book is Introduction to Austrian Economics, essentially, and Bitcoin is not mentioned once, as I understand it, as well. I know he's said that. I don't recall seeing Bitcoin in there once. So, but the thing about it is that these tools to talk to people, right? It's important because when people talk about, I've had this personally, like concerns about the energy use of mining, or does Bitcoin only enable criminals to money launder, right? And so the counter is, okay, here are the facts about Bitcoin mining. Here are all the things that Bitcoin is doing for freedom. Also, if they're getting a little crypto curious, well, here's why non-Bitcoin stuff is maybe not a good idea. Maybe we shouldn't be scanning our eyeballs to get $2 of a new cryptocurrency that I won't name. But these are all tools, right? And I mean, the thing with it is that I've only really talked about Bitcoin to people that I care about, and they don't all take it. Not really one of the people that I'm close to before Bitcoin have really taken on to Bitcoin in the same way I have, at least. And certainly there's an aspect of waiting for the right time, and in some sense it's my duty to at least say that, okay, hey, I'm into this is really, I think this is important, and maybe you should consider looking into it. Here are some resources. You're concerned about the energy use. Okay, well, here you go. But ultimately, it's up to people to take their own journey, and for them to be ready for it, and to them to understand. And this is why that the global South, or the third world, or whichever is the correct term for that these days, might be at an advantage for figuring out Bitcoin, because financial insecurity makes for a much more likely person to take on the Bitcoin. People who are more financially secure, who don't have the motivation to change, might not take that step until it's far too late, or at least and before other people have made that journey. And but then you get to the sort of the unfairness or inequality of it all, and that there is much more capital in the developed world, in North America, in Europe, in East Asia, Australia, that sort of thing. And so the fewer people who get into it can get into it with far more capital than someone from Africa who literally might have cents to spare at the end of every month or something like that. But yeah, if they can just get that little bit in with Lightning, for example, or make small steps, bring the community over, something like that, I think those parts of the world will make huge advancements. But the flip side of it too, though, is that inequality, I think, has been really entrenched by fiat, but it's also not something that can be solved just by saying, all right, you in the developed world, you've got to pay up and make this right. I think by making the financial system more fair, we can make this right, and that's how to do it without being unfair to whole other groups of people, basically, who have nothing to do with the historical circumstances. No one chose where they were born into, right? No one.
Most definitely no one. Look, before we end things, we have a little segment at the end of every episode where we want to show that all roads lead down to Bitcoin. We'll try at least to show. And we ask all of our guests at the end to come up with a way from one word to end up in Bitcoin. So if you hear the word, you have some thinking time now, but we'll obviously cut it if it's too long. And then have to explain either by a story, by an anecdote, whatever comes to mind to get people down to Bitcoin. And we thought today, because we wanted to time this out for Infinity Day, that your word would be infinity. So you would have to find a way to get this back to Bitcoin.
Well, you gave me an easy one. Thank you. All right. Well, so infinity. This is the encompassment of everything. Okay. So all the wealth in the world right now is tied up in some combination of real estate, stocks, bonds, cash, holding under their mattress, that sort of thing. Well, and in this brand new thing called Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, because of its perfect properties, or not necessarily perfect, but good enough to last forever properties, is that it is vastly more fungible. You can transfer it across time. You can transfer it across space. so much easier than, for example, gold, fiat currencies. So Bitcoin is going to be a better store of value compared to everything else. And over time, people are going to choose to put their wealth out of whatever else they held it in, and they're going to put it into Bitcoin. Therefore, Bitcoin is going to trend to infinity, and infinity divided by 21 million is the formula of Bitcoin Infinity Day. And so I understand that if this is going to come out on either on Bitcoin Infinity Day or maybe a little after, but Bitcoin Infinity, the concept is that Bitcoin is for everyone, and Bitcoin is also something that has infinite potential. So all of the wealth in the world, maybe that's one thing you can think of, and you have these amazing, Bitcoin's going to go to the moon and all this, but no, Bitcoin really has infinite potential to do everything for the world. And so Bitcoin Infinity Day is just an idea for everyone to celebrate somehow in their own way that we've made it. We've gotten into Bitcoin, and maybe there's still a lot of work to be done, but at least if you're here, you've figured some of this stuff out, and now you're along for the ride. So that's fantastic. So yeah, celebrate somehow if you like. And yeah, we're at the Freedom Footprint Show. We're going to be doing a live stream for 4 hours or so, from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Central European time. That's 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I think that's going to either that's after or very close to when this is going to come out. But feel free to join us, and I'm saying that to the two of you personally as well. And the main thing is, as a celebration, it's also more like every kind of holiday. There's something to think about, right? And I think to think and reflect on how Bitcoin increases your personal potential. That's what I'm going to think about, and how I can take the potential of Bitcoin and grow something from that in the coming year. So that's the point of infinity. And take from infinity down to Bitcoin. Yeah, it's like all the wealth in the world is going to go into Bitcoin. Everything divided by 21 million. That's it.
Love it. Each and every one of us has got an infinite potential. And thank you for your time, Luke. It's been fascinating, and I'm looking forward to listening back to this one when it goes out. And Joel, any last comments?
No, just a regular. We've got Luke's social linked below, and check out all the links from the topics mentioned in the episode. And Luke, you're now a friend of the show, so you're welcome back every time. And looking forward to, from what I've heard, seeing you in Riga, if I'm not mistaken.
I'll be in Riga, definitely.
Perfect. So I'll see you then.
See you then. Ian, Joel, thanks a lot for your time. Thanks for having me. I appreciate this. It's been a lot of fun.